So everyone should open up their, how I have it set up. I'll just sort of show you the way is I have the Skype window on one side, and then I have the document on the right, split screen, and of course I have a big fat monitor. And so that way I can that, but then at the same time, sometimes we have the chat window open, and we can have the chat in there. I might do that. I might make this window smaller. David likes the question. David sent me a stream of consciousness. Let me see if I find David's insane email. David, is it Raleigh or Rolly, David? I bet he can't even figure out how to use his audio. Both. Okay. Here, I'll show you what my good friend David in Montreal, he's a anarchist, so he can't ever do anything that requires following instructions. So here's his questions. It's like stream of consciousness.
That should be enough to keep us going for a little bit anyway.
So I decided, because I'm a stickler, that I would just take this first thing and put it in there.
That's like, is that like anti-anarchy?
Yeah, yeah, it's exactly, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Let's see. But of course you can always add it. So what other news? So all the people that responded, which was about 9 out of 25 who signed up, picked the 10 a.m. meeting, which is great. And I knew it would happen kind of because Europeans are more I think more interested, intellectual, not just Europeans, Canadians as well. Everyone outside of California, where maybe they're I don't know. I just expected this to happen, and then the Callies, they're like, no way, I'm going out Wednesday night. So I got rid of the Wednesday night 8 p.m. session, which is good for me. Because that was the part of the experiment, was to see who would sign up for which session, and then when everyone went for this one, I decided to stick with this, and it was such a great group, and so now I'm gonna try to get the rest of the people to drop out of allow them to join for the second meeting, and have the recorded session to listen to. Or please give up their ticket so we can have maybe a few more join. But that's my plan. I changed the Eventbrite invite just so you know that it's to not let it expire, and to update it with that there was just one meeting and that people could join by January 10th, and that's it. That was a housekeeping I did at midnight last night. Let's see, what is this? Do we need to dial in? Hi, from David. Yay, David. He's... Okay. Alright. Alright, it's 10. So, let me see. I don't think I need to read this. So everyone knows that they can join the Skype session by clicking on this link. It'll either open it for you in Skype or in the web version. I use the Skype version, obviously. I'll add the participants and hopefully not delete them unless they ask to be deleted. In this session, I like to put where we're from and the LinkedIn so people could see what people do for a living. It's interesting to see the mix of people. I add the discussion questions. I think I'll keep adding them. Like they'll be next but in January, whenever the next one is, the 8th or the 10th, I can't remember. I'll have those. So this one should really be for whatever today is, December 13th. Meeting 1, and I haven't decided if I should call them session or meeting. And then what I'm doing is I'm putting in the references, because I have the Audible and the book. I got this really cool downloadable that came with the Audible book, which I think is rad. And I put it for whoever wants all of them. God, I thought I put the link to download all of them. I changed it.
It's right in the reference material bonus PDF link.
I think I lost it.
Reference material.
Oh, it's in there?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Good for me. All right. So that's only if you want the whole PDF. But I'm going to be, or you want it nicely, because you might do a deck presentation one day, something like that. So that's in there, and then I'm going to just keep adding the images because I think we're going to need them as reference. But if anyone thinks there's anything else missing, the only thing I haven't thought through, this is my first attempt at doing an online book club. I don't know if it's ever even done before in history. Let me know if it has. So this whole thing for me is an experiment. But I'm not sure if we should be adding notes under here, or if we want to be typing in here, because I'm actually audio recording this. I'm actually video and audio I'm screencasting and audio recording it just in case I want to see what it looks like. But only with your permission I will screencast it, and then otherwise it'll be just the audio. But I don't know. Does anyone think we need to be typing notes into this doc?
I don't think so. I think that if we type notes in a doc as we're looking at it or referencing it, it might be distracting.
Okay.
I personally plan to take notes for myself, but I don't know, that's just my thought on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it might be distracting.
Okay. I know, because we're all going to be like typing the same thing. Or saying so-and-so, I don't agree with so-and-so. So we don't need that. So, because we have it audio recorded, so we won't be doing that. So then this doc might go this, and then if anyone just wants to reword their question, that might be fine, but I don't think that's necessary. So I think this is going to be the story. All right, so that's the housekeeping part. For this meeting, I thought it might be nice if people just go around really fast, introduce themselves, and just say, like, I'll pretend I'm me. Hi, I'm Jamie. I organized this book group because I want to learn. I'm reading Blue Ocean Shift. It's something that's going to be incorporated into the revised version of my book in a couple years. I'm also thinking about writing another book called Cracking Strategy. I really respect the authors of Blue Ocean Shift, but I feel because I'm not that smart that I could get more out of the book by discussing it with others than me just trying to read it and think about it on my own. And that was 100% the impetus for doing this, was to really, really, really dive into this book. And so I'm very excited to have you all here. Okay, that was me. Now, Mina, are you here? I think Mina from Sweden. I know she was potentially dealing with issues there. Okay, I don't hear Mina. If you come back. Let's see. How about Ashish? You're not. Is that how I say your name properly?
Yeah, that's right, Jamie. Ashish is good.
Go for it.
All right. So yeah, I'm Ashish Rao. I'm a UX designer here in Lakewood, New Jersey. I began my journey in IT as business analyst, and then I decided to migrate onto the more fun part of IT, UX design. So that's what I do. And I work for a consultancy, so strategy, vision is pretty key out here that we always thinking of it every day. And so this book was very topical. And that's the reason I was interested in the book. And the experiment that you've started, so I'll be part of it.
Excellent. Did you say you went to MIT and dropped out?
Me? No.
Wait, are you finished? Because so many famous people dropped out, so I was just asking.
That's smart enough to drop out.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you for joining. Okay, how about Peter?
Okay, hey guys, yeah, I'm Pete. I'm a UX consultant at a small agency called Bunnyfoot, based around England. I've come to sort of UX fairly late in life. I kind of went back to university and retrained in sort of human factors about 7 years ago now. Did a couple of degrees and then kind of wanted to go out and start making a difference, I guess as we all do. So yeah, found myself doing like 3D product design, working on all sorts of stuff. And then kind of got fed up with the company and looked elsewhere and found out this brilliant company called Bunnyfoot that happened just to focus on more digital stuff. So I now do the same job, it's just called something a bit different, which is user experience. But yeah, the reason I'm here is for the same reason, I guess, as we all probably are, is that it's a newish book. It's relevant to anyone that's interested in strategy, which I am, because I'm heading up the sort of strategy offering with Bunnyfoot. Yeah, as Jamie put, it's great to bounce off ideas off similar-minded people that are obviously committed enough to be on this group. So yeah, just looking forward to hearing what everyone's got to think about it.
Excellent, that's great. So you have a PhD, but you don't put doctor in front of your name?
I can't. Yeah. I'm never sure whether I should or not. I don't really care that it's there, but it's in my email signature. I just don't introduce myself as Dr. Pete. My head wouldn't fit through the door if I did so.
I always wondered about because they asked me if I should have it. They want me to have a PhD or they call me Dr. Levy at USC, and I'm like, I don't have a doctorate. Like, what do I need a doctor for? Like, Dr. Levy, come to the front desk. We have a wireframe emergency. But at the same time, I'm completely envious of people with PhDs.
Yeah, thing is, it sounds cool, but then basically it's 3 or 4 years of being a low-paid researcher, and at the end of it, you get a bit of paper. That's basically what it is. So when you've done it, you realise it's not actually as cool as it sounds. But if it helps you win clients, then that's fine.
Yeah, I did. I wrote a book, which also is another way not to make money and delve in. So I relate. Okay, cool. Thank you, Peter. Leo.
Hi everyone, I'm Leo Jean. I am the lead UX researcher at an RFID company in Seattle called Impinj. And in the past I was a nuclear engineer, but I found my way into UX strategy just by happenstance. And I also have my own meetup group. It's a Learn UX Seattle. It's a group that brings in speakers from outside to kind of teach people transitioning in the field or newly grads what it's all about and just kind of get involved in the community. I met Jamie a handful of times through her speaking opportunities, and she recently spoke to my group, and we've just been in contact since, and she's been really nice to me, giving me really good career advice, because I kind of want to follow the path of, funnily enough, getting a PhD and eventually teaching someday. And lastly, I'm really interested in this because I knew that if Jamie was heading it up, there would be really interesting conversation and great people, which there are, and I'm for sure, I know that it can help me in my job, because as part of being the lead researcher, I work with a lot of our marketing folks, our biz dev, and it's more of understanding better what they do so I can do my job better. And it's just fun to talk about this kind of stuff.
Cool, thank you. And anyone, if you could turn on your video and you introduce yourself, that's great, but not necessary. Okay, good one, Leo. Melanie, are you here?
Yeah, hi. I'm actually just going to turn on my video to say hi and then turn it off because I'm in the area where we're having fires right now, and our internet is kind of flaky, and yeah, so I think it slows it down too much. But so my background kind of is following the theme of PhD in research science because I have a PhD in molecular biology, which means I was on university campuses when the internet was hatched. So I've been like dabbling in the web for a really long time, but only recently decided to go back and get a master's in human factors in information design at Bentley University, which has been really great. And I'm almost done. And I'm really interested in the research and strategy side. I'm kind of moonlighting with a consultancy right now, but I'm also still doing project management in the scientific sphere. But as part of my classes at Bentley, we had a strategy class. So I read the Blue Ocean Strategy book and loved it. And this is a nice way to see how to put it into action in a more practical way. So that's kind of what brings me here. And I'm excited to meet everybody.
Excellent. Is that normal to get a PhD and then go back and get a master's?
Well, I mean, for me, it is because my PhD was in such an unrelated field. So I needed to, get that new knowledge and kind of segue my way in.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that would make sense. Well, that's really interesting. Cool. Well, thank you. And I hope the fires don't reach anywhere near your house.
Yeah, thanks. It's scary.
All right. Paul, are you here?
I am.
The guy with the hat has to be you. Hello.
Leo. I'm being told here I've got a poor connection as well, but can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear and see you. You look great.
Excellent. I am Paul Simons. I'm a founder of a design and strategy consulting firm in Dublin, Ireland. We've been in business for over 15 years, and I'm currently on.
Well, we're losing the audio. Maybe turn up your video. Let's see. Am I the only one losing Paul?
No, he's frozen for me.
He's not doing the usual thing of pulling a really embarrassing face when his video froze though. So
That's right.
yeah, that was good.
Paul, are you there still? We will come back to Paul. I want to come back to Paul. Okay. David, are you still here?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Oh, hey, good. My Apple computer has a spinning wheel, so I'm not seeing any video, and I hear everybody great. Oh, so now you want to have some keywords about me. Bitcoin and blockchain and everything to do with that is something that's been very big in my life recently, but from several years ago. But before that, I don't know where to begin explaining. For some reason, Jamie thinks I have some talent. That's great. And I just do all kinds of different things and manage to make them mix together. So I lead a big UX group in Montreal. It's not the only one in Montreal. There's another group that's totally French speaking. What else? I put together projects. I basically, I don't do anything because I'm too busy doing what I want to do. And long ago, I made money in technology, and I studied all that. I did design and computer and engineering and business, and I'm 60 years old now. So Jamie thinks I belong here, and I'm glad to belong here. It's a great book too, by the way. I hope this is a great, unusual conclusion. Introduction.
It's great. We just want to know if we should run and buy Bitcoin stock right now, or is it too late?
No. If you use the word stock in two different conversations, it means you don't know enough, because there's no such thing as Bitcoin stock.
Okay. I can't figure the darn thing out. We'll take that offline. Thanks, David. Okay, Paul is back, so let's jump back to Paul.
Okay, so where was I?
You had a UX firm or something.
That's it. Yes, founder of a design and strategy firm in Dublin. Over 15 years in business. Currently on sabbatical. On my sabbatical, I'm growing a beard, getting fat, and making a documentary. And I sort of signed up for this because I was starting to feel lonely and needed to use my brain again.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Did you know that I came to Dublin? Did you hear when I did the UX meetup group there?
Yes, I was actually disappointed that I missed it.
I thought you were going to say I was disappointed by your performance. It was so fun. You guys are the nicest people in the world. It was great. Thank you. Okay.
Next time you're
Yeah.
coming up, let's see you.
I will totally be back. We're working on the case. Yolanda.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm not sure if I can. I'm actually on my phone, so I don't think my video will work. But anyhow, I've been a designer for over 20 years, and I just recently took your Master UX Strategy course that just ended a couple weeks ago. And then when I saw this opportunity, I was like, oh, wow, let me take this free training, basically, because it's, as I'm reading the book, I see that there's a lot of the stuff that was in your class. So I am super excited to just go through this book. And as I'm reading it, I'm already fascinated by some of the topics in it. And as I am at work making a hot sauce label, it's like I am hating it. I think I just hate design now. So I'm hoping to actually gain a lot more knowledge about UX strategy, and I'm also currently learning about machine learning and all that cool stuff in technology that's going on that's not designed so much versus on color and type and stuff like that. So I'm really glad to meet everyone and take your class again.
Yay. Although it's not my class, it's everybody. Everybody's the teacher here.
Cool.
Okay. All right. Did we go through everybody? I think we did. So we did that introductions. Awesome. Okay. So why don't we start? The questions honestly are actually kind of ordered by the person who gave them, but if anyone thinks that's weird and wants me to randomize them or something, I'll do that. This first one was posed by Mina. I don't know if she's here. Let's see if we can make sense of it. A growth model of market creating strategy, disruptive creation and non-disruptive creation. Discuss where is the biggest probability to find where's the biggest play? What is the biggest problem to find a blue ocean? What is the biggest probability to find a blue ocean? As a breakthrough solution for an industry's existing problem, as redefinition of an industry's, or when identifying. Does that make sense to anyone?
I recommend we come back to it later.
Okay. She's not here to explain it. All right. How to bring about, David's going to jump on this one. How to bring about humanness in the process. I was especially intrigued with the Iraqi orchestra where divisions were strongly entrenched. Also, how did the Mr. Paul Adelin market them to a biased European audience? How was the concert sold to Americans, if at all? What was the measure of success? So that was the opening case study.
Right, that was me, Jimmy.
Okay, so should we start with how to bring the humanness in the process part?
Could I recommend that we try to answer this question during, but not all at once? Because there's lots of good detail that we could surface gradually, or someone could do research and find out.
I don't know about that. We're supposed to talk right now. We're not going to do research.
No, but I mean, someone could get some of the answers to this question soon, or like on the side by web searching, or later another day.
No, I want everyone to stay here, buddy.
I know, but we've got question 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, And I think, I'm just saying.
Okay, well, okay, I hear you. Does anyone think they have anything to say to this concept about bringing humanists to the process, or have a good idea of humanism? Ironically, I'll bring these photos up if you still see my screen. I was helping my son with his homework, and I hope I imported them. I think I did. They'll come up. And he had in there, let me see, I'll connect in a second. It had definition, it had humanism in his book defined. Let me find it really fast. In my photos.
I won't be able to see the video myself.
That's okay, I'll read it. I'll read it. Well, I mean, I could look it up, but here is the 7th grade, what the 7th graders are reading. The growth of humanism. This is in Revival of Classical Learning. The end of the Middle Ages brought the return of learning in Europe. So this is what's funny, because of course, in the Blue Ocean Shift book, Pete already heard me kvetch about this, is that they don't reference anything, any other writers. Everything is as if they just like made it up from scratch. I don't know why, to be determined later. But anyway, so as you recall, education has declined during the Middle Ages, blah, blah, blah. To achieve greater knowledge, many people turn into the past. They revive the classic ideas of Greece and Rome. The growth of humanism. The study of classical texts and ideas led to the movement known as humanism. Humanism is a way of thought that focuses on human beings, their potential for achievement. It stresses the study of such classical subjects as history, grammar, literature, and philosophy. The goal of humanism is to create well-rounded individuals and to encourage people to achieve all they could in life. Humanist thought. Humanism stressed the importance of the individual, the way of thinking greatly from that of in medieval times, which placed kings in instruction. Skip that. Humanism also promoted a greater balance between intellect and religious faith. Humanist thinkers stressed the importance of leading a Christian life. I'll skip that part. But anyway, that's like what 7th graders are learning, and so I'm wondering if they riffed on it. They got back to it twice in the book, that it's basically a third thing, and are they replacing, here's a question, are they trying to replace the humanism with empathy or collaboration, or what does that code word humanism mean?
Yeah, to me it seemed like a bit of a, they're saying the same stuff that people have been saying for decades about how you create organisational shift, because that's effectively what they're talking about, and cultural change, and so it wasn't hard to agree with them saying you need engagement and where the other two things were, and they sort of said were the pillars of getting this humanness approach to stuff. But it's almost like they've taken something that everyone's been talking about to wrap it up in a different word, which is cool, because you still need to know about it in this book. But I take the point, Jamie, that their referencing is pretty poor, because they use numbering referencing, and they don't have any numbers in the bibliography, so you've no idea. You have to count down the list to figure out what thing they're referencing, which is like a total pain in the ass. But one thing I was thinking specific about the orchestra example was the fact that, not that we have lots of information about the case study in the book, but I can imagine that for struggling musicians that are really finding a hard way to be able to get into some orchestra, the pull for them is actually quite great. So I can imagine it's less about, it would be less of a struggle to shift, to get these people together to play, apart from maybe like a logistical hassle. But it's more about engaging with their potential audiences and getting them on board with the concept. So I guess I've always thought about sort of this from a perspective of, okay, well, one of my clients wants to be delivering better experiences to their customers, so we've got to help them be better equipped at UX and everything that brings. But really what this orchestra is trying to do is like, okay, well, we've got this cool product, we need to sort of change how everyone outside of that thinks about us. So it's almost like you're kind of looking at the humanist from the external perspective as like a customer perspective. So it's kind of interesting talking about humanists, because to me that's an internal thing. They using the case study as a sort of, to me, it's more about external audiences for the case study.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think on a smaller scale, when you have a few people, it's easy to communicate and experience that humanness. But I think in big corporations, I used to work at AT&T, right? It's very hard to communicate with stakeholders and people who truly agree. I think that's what I was trying to get at here, is that how do you kind of bring about the humanness of a certain project at scale? That's what it's interesting to me. So again, I mean, in smaller groups, it's easy to experience that humanness and go about a project with that humanness in mind. But in a big corporation, it seems as if everybody works in silos, and it's very hard to communicate that humanness.
Right. And they talked about that whole silo thing without saying cross-functional teams are better. Yeah, so I think that was the distinction I was trying to figure out. If we're talking about humanness in terms of the people behind the scenes making the product or service, bringing it so that everybody feels included, their voices are heard in the meeting, that we respect everybody on the team as individuals, versus looking at what we're making from a humanistic, if that's a word, perspective. Is it the former or the latter or both?
When I was reading this, what came to mind immediately for me was, because they haven't described it yet, which they might later on in the book, but it's the idea that whatever you make, people have to both care about it and connect with it on a humanistic or personal level for it to be successful. And I think that's what struck me most about this. I mean, I like orchestral music. I really like it. But if I just saw another group playing a scale I didn't know about, I would like it for what it is. But if I saw this, the Iraqi Youth National Orchestra and the story behind it, to where I can kind of understand why it's important, it goes past music, then that resonates with me on a human level. And to me, that's what humanism means now, giving meaning to something to where people can resonate with it on a personal level and can understand it on a human level. So I guess it connects with them more, but that might change as the book describes it out, fleshes it out further.
Can I speak next?
Yeah, please.
Okay, who was just speaking? Because I don't have any video.
Oh, I'm sorry. This was Leo.
From Seattle.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Leo, hi. So I'm David. I'm in Montreal. I think there was a definition given with the 3 points: atomization, first-hand discovery, and fair process, which itself had 3 sub-points: EEE, engagement, explanation, expectations. So that's one of the reasons why I sent those notes to Jamie, just to tell her what I had been gleaning. Did anybody else see that was essentially their definition of, oh, by the way, it's humanness, according to them.
Yeah, here's the diagram on the shared screen, by the way, on the right side of the Google Doc 4.1.
What I might do is end the call from my side and call back and see if my computer picks up the video, because it's just showing a spinning wheel.
Okay.
I'm on an old server, and something sort of is half crashing. I mean, maybe I should just stick with audio.
Well, it's the figure from the book. It's figure 4-1, which is the one that you're talking about, I guess.
You can just download it from the doc.
I'm going to hang up and call back and see if I can get video. I don't have any of those images.
Okay. They're in the Google Doc. So it sounds like from... No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
This is Melanie. I was just going to say that my understanding of humanness from the book is that it is very much related to the process and the people who are making the product. I don't think that they're thinking at this point about the users in that way, but they're talking about breaking down barriers that might stop people from participating in the process or might even stop the project.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I read too.
Okay, that would make sense.
Because, I mean, the way they describe it is that humanness builds the confidence of the team.
Oh, yes.
To take action. And then they've got this toolkit. So, like, once you start with getting everybody confident, then you're going to dive in with the toolkit and get something done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I love the thought behind Leo's idea, because it's like, it would make sense in the example of like the red nose thing, you know, because that was a very humanist initiative. But I think in the context of the book, like if we look at the diagram, atomization breaks a challenge down to small concrete actions. So people have so this is for the team. The second part, firsthand, allows people to see things they've never seen before. So in UX strategy, it's like I always try to have them involved in customer discovery so they can see firsthand what the users are like.
Mm-hmm.
And fair process recognizes people for their intellectual and emotional worth, building trust. Because we know in enterprises so often it's, as they mention in the book, which I also agree with, it's like goes strategy, then it goes implementation, and the people who are doing the implementation, which is 90% of the people, are just like making the stuff and they have no input, no seat at the strategy table. And maybe this is kind of that.
I think when I was, so now that I look at Figure 4.1, it totally makes sense on what everyone is saying about how the book did define it and did give a structure to it. But when I read that story, my brain immediately went to everything that I do in my job, where all I think about is the user. So, and this is partially why this discussion like this helps. I get out of my own headspace and I start to think about it in a different, more holistic view. So yes, I agree that Figure 4.1 is totally how I should be thinking about it in context of the book, reading further. But yeah, that was just me.
Hey, this is David. I wish I could see Figure 401. I'll look at it another day. But the word in French that comes up is mobilization. And one of the authors is French speaking, naturally. And I think they did use the word mobilization at one point in the book, but probably my guess is that they wanted something more English sounding, and they created this term of humanness. Anyway, I work a lot in French in this part of Canada, and they talk about mobilization all the time, meaning getting people to buy in. So that repeats what we heard a minute ago. If your stakeholders and your employees and your other people, if they're not interested, you're not going to get very far. You have to have people getting curious and getting interested and getting finally engaged. And that's another French word, engagement, mobilisation and engagement. And really, there's a lot of people talking about that every day in this city of Montreal.
Excellent. I think we beat that one to a horse and we got it sorted. Oh, we got it. All right. How about this one? The authors talk about not focusing. This is Pete and I already went off on this. Talk about not focusing too much on what competitors are doing so you don't get blinkered by ways of doing things. Then they sort of contradict themselves by introducing their strategy canvas tool. Pete, I assume you've seen that from Blue Ocean Strategy.
Yeah, well, I just flicked ahead into this current book to see what the model looked like. Yeah,
it's the strategy canvas is basically looking at all the different factors of that a company competes on. They always use Southwest Airlines or Discount Airlines as an example, bringing down like the cost of like free that you pick your own seats versus no seats. Hub just less airports, the ones that only need traffic, bringing things down and bringing things up. Which is designed to do a competitor analysis and look for opportunities. So you compare all the different, let's say in that example, airlines to each other. It's a different way that I personally teach and do competitive analysis because I look at a lot more factors. Either way, your competitors are going to start to taking notice of what you roll out of Blue Ocean. Some might come after you and turn your Blue Ocean red quickly. How do you decide whether your nice Blue Ocean is getting too red for your liking? How can you be confident that your value navigation is going to be so massive you'll be sailing around a Blue Ocean for ages? I appreciate that. Should we use like a case study like Airbnb as an example? They're not their case study, but one that we're very familiar with, which I think is an example of if we break down the thing that they broke down, which is what are companies that are doing disruptive innovation versus market creation. And I think it was, and the distinction was that you could look at Airbnb and say, oh, people stopped taking taxis and then started using Ubers, so they took away from the taxi market. Versus Airbnb, well, there's all these people who may not have traveled anyway. Some might come from hotels, but that they created a notion in the sense that now all of a sudden people like me are subletting their homes to make money, and also I stay in places. I can go to Paris and it's affordable, and I wouldn't have gone otherwise with hotels or Craigslist.
So yeah, I mean, I think Airbnb is a good example to talk about that, because I used them recently in a training course, and I got people to do a very quick competitor analysis exercise with Airbnb, and I personally didn't know they actually had as many direct competitors as they do. So Airbnb a few years ago were laughing because it's like, yeah, we've nailed this. Now, I mean, not that they would necessarily rest on their hands and think, yeah, we never have to do anything anymore, but they have definitely have people coming after them now and trying to directly compete with them, in this red ocean. So I guess my question was more about, you can't ignore what everyone else is doing, because you need to figure out how you're going to do stuff that makes you different from them. If you invest all your money in like some idea without having checked what everyone else is doing first, you might just copy, your next competitor without even realizing it, which is clearly not anything or something anyone's going to do. But once you kind of made your move, then it's like, okay, well, how do we maintain this competitive edge? Because it won't last forever. And particularly maybe this doesn't work quite so well with the Airbnb case study, but they gave examples in the book of, say, more technology focused things where, when we were talking about who made the first VHS recorders, and no one knew who that was because other people had come along, taken the idea and just done it better. So I guess from my perspective, if I was going to go along and try and convince someone or try and help somebody along the way to create a blue ocean strategy, then it's a case of, okay, well, now we've done this, how do we know how well things are still going? What are the metrics or KPIs we can use to figure out what colour the ocean still is and whether we need to do anything about it. So yeah, that's kind of what I was querying.
One thing that comes to mind about this with this strategy canvas and Airbnb is that I remember reading that one of the things that Airbnb is competing with is not hotels, but it's competing with people not traveling at all. And that's a really interesting idea, because like if you do your strategy canvas and like that's your main competitor is people not traveling because they can't afford to stay in a hotel, that really is a pretty blue ocean. So like in terms of thinking about who you're comparing to on a strategy canvas, the thinking should be pretty broad, and competitors can be like, the example of like a pencil for doing your taxes as opposed to, a piece of software. Like competitors can be really, you can think very broadly about competitors, and that can help when thinking about these questions.
Yeah, same thing for Uber. Now that Uber exists, the number of trips has doubled. So taxis have a small share of a huge market.
Yeah. A couple ideas, and I hate to monopolize conversation, but so obviously I took concern with this because I teach. The most important part of my book is on doing a competitive analysis, and it's a reaction to design thinking and lean startup, where everyone's like either, oh, I'm gonna MVP this and it's a great idea, and we're and they don't look at the market. They ignore traditional business strategy. Although I love the concepts behind lean startup, but it's kind of like, oh, let's just live in a bubble. And then design thinking, another bubble, where let's approach the solution first, diverge, converge, and of course we'll pursue this idea without, again, maybe doing a little user research, but not looking to see if they're making a replica of the audience. So my answer to that in my book was let's look at direct competitors, let's look at indirect competitors, and look at influencers, and accept the notion that inventions are building upon each other's idea, and that you do need to quote Steve Blank, have something that is so much better, and they say that without giving Steve Blank credit, than the rest. And Steve Jobs, which they do, give an example of the classic MP3 concept, he did that, and he created, he saw, but what he did, which was so amazing, it wasn't just the MP3 player, it was iTunes. It was MP3s. They forgot to mention that MP3s all of a sudden became a format that was easily distributable. So I think it's like, on a technology level, it's very complicated. I agree with their point that, yes, the first person who lays the egg doesn't necessarily win. It's the person that hatches it. And Airbnb certainly hatched it. And what they're trying to do now is expand into, if you look at their homepage, it's all about Airbnb. It's about, going to a town and having like someone take you hiking to the Hollywood Hills, or taking a yoga class, like trying to get hosts like me to make it more like a really cool experiences while you're traveling. And so because they can see VRBO and all these other competitors, but I wonder, I think an interesting question, is there a distinction between companies who are in the tech sector where it's so easy to knock off a website or a platform versus their other example of Viagra, Cirque du Soleil, life coaching that are offline? Like, we don't see other Cirque du Soleils, do we? Anybody?
No, thanks.
Well, technology innovation is really expensive. Technology is creating a new technology, I think, is what they're thinking. Like, technology innovation is all the R&D that goes into creating a new drug. So, like, it's super expensive to make Viagra. And it's also kind of expensive to knock it off. So it depends on how expensive it is, and then you have patents and things like that. So that plays into it also. But like, just making a website, in my mind, isn't really necessarily a technology innovation, because to me, technology is something, and I think in the book they're talking about it like something that's a massive leap forward in terms of technological advancement, the technology invention of, VHS recording devices. That's like years of research and so on, or making smaller hard drives that can store more in a tiny space. That's expensive. Making a website like Airbnb is not so much. And I'm not sure that's the technology innovation they're talking about when they talk about people knocking it off to get a value innovation.
Yeah. Right, there's a lot there to unpackage. Airbnb, I just read another book about, thank you for being late, that why Airbnb is successful is because of the trust factor, which isn't, which like Yelp and like Uber and so many other, and Amazon, the reviews that people rely on. But they also set a precedent for the humanist thing, to be used wrongly, that we as hosts need to set our homes up and be respectful, so they're nice for the guests, and the guests need to have, like, they changed the behavior. They changed to me, it's a mental model shift.
Yes.
Like, that's the big thing. But I don't know,
Yeah.
Pete, what do you think about this? Like, when you think about the competitors,
Yeah, I don't know. I've been keeping a sort of a half an eye on Airbnb and what they've been doing, and it's interesting to see they're now starting to diversify. Presumably because they're an unstoppable money making machine now, and they can't stop making money. So they've got to do something. But yeah, it's just interesting because talking about the technology innovation and value creation, there's so many ways of doing it. Essentially, it still comes back to having to solve user needs and help people achieve their goals. And if that's for a pill or an iPod or having somewhere different than a hotel to stay, there's all sorts of ways in which we can make people's lives better. I guess my thing was just more like, how close do your competitors have to get? How much of a chunk out of your pie do they have to take before you start getting a bit itchy feet and start having to diversify or do something different again? So I mean, I guess that's a subjective thing, and it change from business to business, I suppose. It was just something that flagged up to me in the book anyway, that they didn't seem to be talking too much about yet. So it'll be interesting to see if they come back to that and kind of clarify that later in the book, I think.
Definitely. Cool. Let's move on to the next one. I'm most curious about further exploring the concept of turning a technology innovation into a value innovation. I believe this is extremely relevant for both consumers of technology as well as producers of technology to understand this concept.
Right, so this was mine, and this goes exactly to what you were talking about, like the VCR example in the book, how I had no idea who created it, who hatched the egg per se, but we all know the companies that took the value innovation and took it to where it wasn't just, and the segue too, that thing was amazing, but there wasn't much value in it per se. So I keep thinking about how fast technology is moving on a year-to-year basis, like how where a cell phone is going to be, and then the idea of the Apple Watch damn near displacing these really fine Swiss watches that we held so high. And so yeah, technology innovation and value innovation. I'm just really curious, as technology keeps going and going, how are some ways they're going to find ways to make this new tech more meaningful and valuable in our lives as we get busier and busier and our attention spans get shorter and shorter, and yeah, that type of.
I mean, kind of coming back to what I was saying before, sorry, I thought we had skipped down to that question because we were dabbling into that, but I think it's probably smarter to not be the person who invents the technology. Let somebody else pay for it.
Right.
And then once they've worked it all out, come along and add value to their technology.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of an analogy for that one as well. I think I feel with technology, it's not, there's a big first to market thing, and Airbnb has a first to market. They have more, so yeah, someone could easily knock off Airbnb. Someone could say, oh, I'm going to knock off Uber, but they're going to really have to fight hard, or Facebook.
Yeah.
I feel like, but then let's say we go back to Kodak and say, well, look what happened to them. So I think any company, I think that the Silicon Valley companies in particular know that if they rest on their laurels, that there's going to be some, which is why they're always buying little startups, that they have to constantly keep being innovative, or they're going to lose.
But one other thing about those Airbnb, Uber, and Facebook all have in common, this is a really interesting aspect of like first to market kinds of things that helps them succeed, is the network effects. So if you get enough people on your platform and bought in and on that platform, it does become hard for people to come from behind and get in.
That's
so
right.
Network effects matter.
Switching costs.
Network effects are the main thing to remember for the fact that they are so big that for them it's still blue. The ocean is still profitable.
And this is something I just thought about when Melanie, was that you that I was just talking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed
So I was just thinking, in the book they use examples like VCR, Segway, Google Glass. And the thing those three have in common are they were technology innovations, but they were also in a form of a physical product. So in the realm of product design, industrial design. But then Facebook, Airbnb, I believe that their innovation was this, and I use it all the time, but they had a user experience innovation, a value to where they were selling the experience, kind of like how you've heard Apple say, oh, we don't make products, we make experiences. And I wonder to get your thoughts about if there's any line there between physical product innovation and then, I guess, experience innovation, and what you think that's going to look like coming up.
This is David here. I think the Apple products managed to create a form of pride that worked because of the packaging and the technology and a form of which you might call snobbery or something. So it's something about the experience of buying it and owning it was, what's the word? I don't know. Just like in the 60s and 70s, the French haute couture, people would spend a lot of money on clothing.
Brand value.
Yeah, brand. Exactly. Just to add one detail, I can tell you about an interesting experiment somebody ran in the 80s, and he made a multi-million-dollar company out of it. A partner, and he put a small ad in a trade magazine offering if anybody mailed a check in order, they'd receive this graphics card, and it did not exist, and the price they gave was lower than their cost, but they figured they could just delay. If they got orders, they could delay it until prices came down. And they built a multi-million-dollar company out of it because it was very popular. They mailed everyone back in the postal system saying, we can only deliver to you our next generation, which is higher end. So we're going to return your check to you. And then they asked people to mail a bigger check in. But they also included their backgrounds as to who they were and said, so you know who we are. We're not asking for more money just because we're anonymous. We're also local people. So the company it's still around. It's called Matrox, Matrox. But after a few decades, they were no longer the biggest in the market. So, but it's interesting that this approach of putting up a fake website for a fake product and trying to get orders before you've even built your first product, this is quasi unethical, depending on where you live and depending on how you describe it. It might be borderline immoral.
You're talking about Kickstarter and me teaching fake landing pages?
No, that's soft stuff. And Kickstarter is very clear about what it is. So you're giving money as a donation and hoping to get something out of it in the future. But I don't want to get too far on the rest of it. What Melanie and Leo said is more what I agree with, and that's why I'm stepping in. So I like the way the conversation is going. I don't want to get into too much detail about it.
What was the name of that company?
Matrox. They're still around, and the owners are multimillionaires, and because they just ran a profitable company of a year, so they did not want to take risks that were too big. So they're no longer the world's biggest in terms of graphics cards.
Well, Tesla, I just finished the autobiography, Elon Musk, they were taking orders, and at a certain point he ran out of money and did what he totally didn't want to do, which was went into the funds of the pre-orders for the car while they didn't have a car and they were at risk of shutting down the business. And thankfully they did knock the car out, but barely. So there, I don't know what to say about that. And I'm wondering if it's still relative to this discussion of, I think we're going to learn in the next 5 steps their methodology for coming up with the blue ocean strategy, because in their first book all they had was case studies. And this is my same complaint with Clayton Christensen's books, is always this retrospective, which is so easy, versus prescriptive on how to do it. And he said he wouldn't do it with jobs theory, but he did, whatever the new book's called. And so I'm hoping that maybe we'll have actual concrete examples to test this against.
Yeah.
In the later
I think
meetings.
Tesla. Nope. Sorry. Where'd you go?
Yeah, go.
I think Tesla is a great example because their engineering behind their cars is absolutely amazing. But if you think about it, also, there have been other electric cars which engineering has been good, or other cars where they're really nicely built, but it came at a time where people grew more and more concerned about emissions from cars and then the CO2, and that drove a really like the value innovation wasn't just technology innovation. And I think that's why Tesla is able to get people to pay like $1,500 for a promise to be able to buy a car in a year and a half. I mean, pre-ordering a car, that sounds absurd to me, but it works because they have a really good value.
But another way they're innovating on value is by taking their battery technology and like putting it in houses.
Yeah. Oh,
and
absolutely.
you know, that's taking all that expensive technology and adding even more value.
In my previous life as an engineer with doing renewables, that is battery storage, energy storage is right now the biggest barrier to why we don't see solar panels everywhere, because it's really hard to do that. But it's really cool that a car company is paving the way for battery storage.
It's not ironic because if Elon put all his money into Solar City, was doing Tesla, and then did SpaceX, and now he's basically using. I mean, the concepts behind them are all very similar. First of all, he's very lean. He wants to make all the parts, so of course he's going to bring everything in-house. And I had Solar City out here to give me estimates. They said one thing, and then once the engineers got out here, they're like, "Oh, we can only cover you with 34% usage of your bill offset." And I was like, "That's ridiculous." And if their battery, I go, "What about the battery?" And they're like, "Our battery is not ready yet. It won't be ready for 3 years." So I couldn't get it. I couldn't get solar. I was super bummed. But that battery is what they're banking on, and I think that's going to be their huge. I mean, I feel like Tesla is probably maybe I would venture to say one of the biggest blue ocean companies out there. Tesla and SpaceX.
Yeah, I mean, just the way we were talking about Tesla and kind of what they're doing with their products, I'm kind of thinking of like virtual reality follows a bit of a parallel in terms of like tech innovation. Sort of, it's almost like sometimes people want to persevere with tech because they see the value that will come eventually if they persevere enough. So like 3D imagery and virtual reality has been going for yonks, and it's only now, got to the point where the tech's good enough to deliver on the promise. So it's kind of almost like, you don't want to stop people, innovating with technology because, if the conditions are right, the value will come with it. And I think that's kind of, that seems to be Elon Musk's approach anyway, just like he's on a mission to, get rid of every power station going, or whatever he wakes up and thinks about when he's having his cup of coffee. But he knows what, obviously he's convinced he's doing the right thing. And I'm sure people that are investing tons of money in virtual reality and other things are convinced that now is the time that the world will be ready for this. So maybe give him a call in another couple of years, Jamie, you might have more luck.
Yeah, that virtual reality, that's a whole nother thing. I'm trying to figure out if it's still ahead of its time. I'm still just seeing it in museums and in game-like, contexts. But that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, just a quick one. Just I was thinking as we started off this topic, I was kind of thinking that it's almost like sort of the evolutionary process. People get an idea, other people try and sort of take it up, and it's almost like genetic mutations. Someone who creates a bit of tech might not make it first time, but someone else will pick it up and do something a bit different with it, and that'll either fail or go massive or whatever. So it's kind of, in the grand scheme of things, we kind of head in the right direction. It's just that you might have some casualties along the way, but hopefully, at a society level, we'll hopefully benefit from everyone's endeavours. But that's not much good if you're trying to make a living out of it, is it, unfortunately?
Yeah. Okay. I know if anyone needs to drop, feel free to drop. I'm going to keep going, maybe stretch this to 90 minutes in the future. How about the ideas, or maybe they won't because we won't have intros in the future. The ideas in Chapter 2, relationships between strategies and technology versus value innovation. Who was that?
Oh, that was me. And I think there I was thinking, like, which of those, so there are 3 options in figure 2-1 for market creating strategy, and I was wondering if they can be broken down into like certain ones that might require technology innovation, or some where you don't need that necessarily. So like in the example of cameras and digital cameras, like that was a breakthrough solution, right? Is that what they called that one, a breakthrough? Yeah. And that required massive technological innovation. But then redefining a problem like Cirque du Soleil, that didn't require technology.
Right.
Can you in that redefinition area, can you do that without, I guess you can do that by innovating on technology or without it. Maybe they're all that way. I just wasn't sure whether there was maybe some place where you could say this is definitely an easier way to innovate without having to make new technology.
Yeah.
So sort of like, do you solve the problem by creating new technology, or can you solve the problem by using existing technology? Probably you can do that in all three of those. But anyway, that's where my mind was kind of swirling around.
Yeah.
In that chapter.
Here's the thing that they didn't mention. I can't find the book offhand, but they're constantly talking about on that one is reframing, right? Reframing the problem. And there's a whole body of a study of books and it's called Reframing. Is anyone familiar with it? I can't find one right handy. The one I was referencing for a course I had to teach, a lecture. But it came out of England, I think, and it's like this concept, and for social innovation, of trying to think of looking at how redefining and solving an industry problem. It's really like reframing the problem and the techniques around looking at things differently. Let me think of an idea off my head. I mean, Airbnb is another reframed problem.
I mean, probably anything in this blue ocean arena would fit under reframing. It seems like that's their theme, is to get outside of the box of perceived limitations.
Yeah. I think it's like it requires this. The reframing to me is changing a mental model. Like that's my, changing a mental model is how we think, what it takes to accomplish a task. And so people think, oh, I go to the bank, I get cash by going to a bank, an ATM card or whatever, and all of a sudden it's reframed into a different way. Back to David's example, Bitcoin is a massive reframing of how we spend money. Signal, which I'm now using for texting, and based on Snapchat, encrypted technology is a new way of communicating with people and knowing that my messages will disappear. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, the way I'm kind of thinking of this is that, if you can think about the problem you're trying to solve that no one else is solving at the moment, it's really when you start thinking of the solution that you're driven down a route of, is that going to be technology, or is it just reusing what we've got, or is it reframing our service? I think maybe if you're taking the technology-led approach to how your business works, like your R&D team are just churning out amazing ideas every day, then you might have to start thinking, okay, well, let's see if this new piece of kit they've turned up with can reframe the problem for us, or brainstorm around how this thing would fit into the marketplace somehow. But I think if you're starting from, just the status quo and where we're going to go, it's only when you start getting into solutions that you start thinking about what the technology would look like, I think.
And that's a really good practical viewpoint on it. I like that.
Yeah, definitely. It had a little bit of design thinking in terms of thinking about backwards engineering solutions. But I think this really applies more in the non-technology sector, like, to me, like Cirque du Soleil and Viagra. They position themselves as a lifestyle thing. They reframed it for people instead of it being erectile dysfunction. That was a huge thing. Cirque du Soleil, like I love that. You know, I wish I would go more, but like reframing how we think about the circuses.
So where do those reframings fit in here? Like, is that one particular type of market creating strategy, or does that cut across all three? Maybe that's
I was going to say, the way I understood this was the figure 2.1, the growth model of market creating strategy. And this is something I was fascinated with too, because the disruptive creation and non-disruptive, and then there's this thing in the middle that says redefining and solving an existing industry problem, or identifying and solving a brand new problem, or seizing a brand new opportunity and non-disruptive. So, yeah, I think that the idea of reframing a problem as opposed to trying to start from scratch and create something that the world's never seen before, I think that falls into non-disruptive creation more so than disruptive, and that's a concept that I never heard phrased like that, because in the fast-moving in tech, all I hear is the disruptive, like this thing is disruptive, that thing is disruptive. So the idea of non-disruptive or reframing is something that's interesting to me, but to me that's how I understood it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be better to just, I think they're actually, my theory on why they added that was that everybody started thinking Blue Ocean strategy is about disruptive innovation to get there. And they're trying to say, no, we're not trying to get people to lose their jobs. We're creating a new market and of people who wouldn't have used it anyway. This goes to jobs theory. I was mentioning this to Pete that they don't mention, which is all about discovering customers who aren't yet customers, who have unmet needs, and creating something for them is non-disruptive creation. Another example they gave, which I found someone who countered it with last night, was life coaching, saying, oh, well, life coaching is now this big business, and all these people who want to get life coach, who want to get advised on personal or professional growth, go to these people who have no degrees, by the way, and get advice. But I actually think secretly that those people should go see therapists. And they're actually taking jobs away from therapists. I don't know. Are they reframing, or, you know, who's delusional here?
Do you think we have the same problem in the UX industry? Because one thing that we come across is a lot of people saying they can do UX, and they might have like read a blog on it and know how to use Photoshop, and that makes them a UX consultant. So
right. That's right. Like GA reframed, General Assembly reframed our industry and commodified user experience by saying if you can take a 6-month course for $15,000, you too can be a UXer. But that's a whole nother story. That's just very depressing.
Yeah.
Can I add to this? Does anybody remember Control Data Corporation? CDC?
It sounds vaguely familiar.
Well, when I was really young, it was a hot new thing. Today, there are many corporations, many small companies doing the same thing. They call them boot camps, and they say within 6 weeks you can be a professional coder. So everywhere in the world, there's a wave or two where things just happen and suddenly people are getting qualified. And Control Data did exactly what the boot camps are doing today. They're observing and accompanying their graduates into their first job and coaching them in the background, just to make sure that they do a good job for a few months or 18 months, and they get into the environment. So it's not a really bad thing that they're doing, but it's not a really good thing either, because we'll find all that later. There'll be all the horror stories in the Medium articles and blogs. But I mean, life coaches too, they take a lot of money from you, I suppose. I've never paid one. And but therapists too. There have been cases where therapists really don't do any good, or they don't do any bad either. But if anyone were to spend time with anyone for a year or two or three, that subject person would change. They would evolve. I don't see it as a good example. In this book by Renée and John Kim, there are some questionable passages, but I don't want to be hypercritical. By the way, coming back to the question Melanie asked about reframing, I think that's more on the right-hand side of the diagram. I can see the diagram in the Google Doc, figure 2.1. Reframing is a known tactic, known technique. It's been known for centuries by many people. Even Machiavelli wrote about it.
Yep.
550 years ago. He wrote about reframing the debate. And it's a way to get out of a dilemma. If someone's trying to corner you, or if you're being accused of something.
I guess maybe it's like a few things in this book. You know, it's not an original idea, but they have to write it. They have to put it in the book, otherwise the book wouldn't tell the proper story. It would just be nice if they maybe like referenced other people, but not just to make it, you know, coming with like the academic side of things. You know, you can't just plagiarize someone else's work, which I don't think they're doing per se, but you know, if you want to go and extend your knowledge about the subject, it's really helpful to have like a reference list to see where they got, you know, where their ideas came from and track back. So even if you do track, you know, 5 centuries back to Machiavelli, you know, that would be a cool thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I would have loved to know that. Cool.
But one thing is, I mean, I think when they talk about redefinition, they aren't just talking only about reframing, right? So we're clear on that, like, because that's getting to their strategy canvas, is redefining the problem, right? It's not just reframing it like the Viagra example. It's looking for something different, like. Yeah, an existing industry problem is that people want to go to circuses that aren't just for kids.
Right.
So that's not just reframing and repackaging the existing circus. It's creating a new kind of circus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay.
I have a funny question. Melanie said circus, not just for kids. So if you think of that phrase, not just for X, imagine in North America, you want to be involved in encouraging more people to return bottles, return cans, return packaging, in a way that's not just for homeless people. Because where I live, if I talk about encouraging more bottle return, people say to me, "Why? You want to become a homeless person?" You know, because everyone else just throws the bottles and cans away. They're worth 5 cents or 20 cents, or even in a few cases $1. But nobody is motivated to do anything about that problem. So there's huge amounts of landfill that don't need to exist. So that's another problem. And I'm wondering how to reframe it or redefine it. So
in California, they made it normal by giving you a bin for it.
Yeah, they've done that here too, but it's honestly just not catching on. It's not prideful or sexy, or it's not. There's something wrong with the system.
Before I forget, this is actually a really good example of exactly what you're talking about, the recycling issue. I can't remember which European country did it, but they tackled this using the fun theory, the idea that if you inject fun into anything, well, making something fun is the easiest way to induce any sort of behavioral change, recycling being one of them. So what they did was they made these recycle bins that if you put something in it, there's a sensor, and then it made a sound that it was falling, for a lot like Wile E. Coyote, like falling, and then it made the sound. And just by having these, that little rush of dopamine and happiness people get when they recycle, and like kids loved it, everyone loved it. They saw a drastic increase in recycling just because they reframed the behavior to make it like a fun, enjoyable activity that you would look forward to. And that's the fun theory has been used all over design, and it's proven to have worked. And
Isn't
that's,
that comic relief as well? They're
Yeah,
red.
it's that red nose thing, right?
Right.
They make stuff fun, and people. So that's the best way to do behavioral change. And I think that's a great example, now that you bring it up, of recycling and how we can do non-disruptive creation. Because it's not like we made some revolutionary way to recycle. We just made it more fun, found an existing problem. And if you want to look that up, I believe you can. I think you can Google Volkswagen fun theory, and they've Volkswagen the first kind of brought it to the mainstream, and there have been a lot of good examples of how it's been used to change behavior.
That's cool. That's a great reference. Thank you.
Oh, good. I really thought you were going to do that. Nothing was going to show up, and like an idiot. It'll happen later in this conversation.
No, and it also makes sense with the water bucket challenge. Sorry,
Yeah,
Nelly?
definitely. I want to go. I want to go and buy one of those bins. It's
Yeah,
wonderful.
it's really cool.
That's awesome. Okay, we're getting close to the end. Let's see, atomization. What are the last few? Anyone want to jump on these last few?
Yeah. Let's do it real fast. First of all, atomization just sounds to me like you're creating what they call in the coding field pseudocode. You're creating a batch of words that get closer to the step-by-step logic flow, step-by-step mechanism or algorithm that would be implemented by physical devices and software. So there's nothing wrong with that, and getting people to talk about all these steps just so they recognize the details. You might call it granularity also. How deep do you go in terms of minute by minute, second by second, item by item work? That's it.
Yep. That makes sense.
I raised this question on atomization, and to go back to one of the points raised earlier, I think it might have been by Jamie, that this book and Christensen's book make more sense retrospectively. They explain case studies once they've happened than they do as programs for moving forward. Now, this book has attempted to introduce this step-by-step process for planning and implementing a business with a forethought. And what struck me about it was that atomization is a really important part of that process, and being able to effectively break things down step by step. So I raised it around atomization. I think that's something that's incredibly difficult to do effectively, and I'm just wondering what the views of the group are on that.
What the views of the group are on the last thing you said?
Do you agree with my assessment or my view there that the books make more sense retrospectively, explaining case studies that have happened, then outlining a sort of framework for moving forward and planning businesses forward? And if that's the case, then the effort here then around atomization is that to do it effectively, break things down to step by step. And my view is that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. So what are the views on how to go about it? And assuming, of course, we agree with the previous point.
I think we need more information architecture experts to comment on this. And it's true, it requires more discussion than you can think. They say one picture is worth 1,000 words, but one prototype is worth 1,000 discussions.
That's lovely. I just looked in the index, and atomization is not discussed further in the book. It is only on page 67. It's not going to be explained, and they just say it's designed, represents a step-changing approach. It's purposely designed not to feel that way inside, blah, blah, blah. Let me see. That's how you get to... Or to zoom in on buyers group that could benefit from your industry's offering but don't currently purchase it. When framed this way, each step pushes the boundaries of our thinking, but no one step overwhelms us. At any one stage, none of us... It's just breaking things down, yet the accumulation of small steps lead to a blue ocean ship. No duh. That's how you do anything, is you break things down. We call this atomization after Einstein's reflection. Hey, somebody got credit. that if you deconstruct any challenge into its basic components or atoms and focus on solving them one at a time, even the larger challenge shifts from being overwhelming to being intellectually solvable. As people register the feasibility of it. Yeah.
But you know what they might be talking about here, what I took this as was that their whole rest of their book, which does have a lot of little steps in it and a lot of little canvases and tools and things, I think it might be woven through their whole process, and they're trying to explain why that's important, because that's how you build the confidence, which is the point of the humanness, which the atomization is part of. So there's some architecture, but I took it as, you know, they have this process that's deliberate in sort of starting slowly and breaking down and building these tools that help build the buy-in and confidence.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important part, because presumably most of the people that are going to be using these tools or being convinced that these tools are the right tools to use are going to be pretty risk-averse senior managers, potentially, and unless they're just gung-ho sort of entrepreneurs just going for it. But I mean, I think it's again another example of something that we all know and we all do. It's just they had to include it. But I think that's a really good point, Melanie, that they have kind of practiced what they preach. But no one's ever going to say, hey, right, I wanted to build a space rocket and then expect you just to imagine it and it appear out of nowhere. You know, it's like, well, what am I going to do next? You know, you have to break it down, otherwise you're never going to get anywhere. They just called it atomization, I suppose.
Well, this may be a moot point, but the word atom is derived from Greek, meaning you cannot cut it into a smaller piece. It is cut into the smallest possible piece. That's what it means. Yeah. So for several centuries, or 2 centuries at least, physicists had no proof that atoms existed. It was a hypothetical entity for them until finally in the 20th century they were proven to exist physically. They were seen, so to speak. And then physicists began to realize that you can cut atoms into smaller pieces. But at first, they were good. It was a good term to use to mean the particulate matter which made up liquids and gases and solids.
Yeah. Just one more sort of, I guess, like sort of nerdy theory point is that I studied quite a lot about systems theory, and particularly how that applies to how large organisations fail and have big accidents. And all of the researchers in that area say you can't break things down into single components if you're trying to understand a complex system. So because you have lots of unexpected emergent behaviour coming from your organisation or how a system operates. So it's interesting they're talking about, you know, breaking potentially what's going to be a very complex shift for an organisation, having to be broken down into small parts, which totally has to happen. But I think what's going to be important as well, and probably something that most people do anyway, is just having stop points or milestones where you can take a break and say, okay, let's reflect on what just happened, and did anything unexpected happen, and what we're going to do about it if it did. You know, is everything going according to plan, or do we need to adapt? Which, you know, people do anyway, but it'll be interesting to see if they specifically call that out as part of their process.
Yep. That's feedback and control systems.
Yeah.
I've never thought of milestones in that way, as a break, pausing, a reflection. I like that. I always thought it was like a goal, like you're running for.
Yeah, that's because no one ever builds time. That's because no one ever builds time into their project timeline to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's hard to take a real pause, because you can't stop a living organization from continuing to live. So even like accountants and auditors have this problem with their inventory and their year ends, because the organization continues breathing every day.
Yeah, I guess you've got to just sell the case for saying that, you know, we might need we should have some time for review, because if we carry on building the wrong thing, we're going to waste all our time and money. Like it's you know, you can make the case. I'm sure there's probably plenty of examples if you can go dig around for people that just rushed into something and epically failed, even if it's on a personal level, you know.
But I think it's good to use this control theory paradigm to analyze business growth and failure. I think that's good.
Cool. Well, let's see if they do that in the book.
Well, I think we covered the humanist, and then this one was Yolanda's. I think she split. Talk to customers, fill their pain. I don't know what this is. Unless anyone has any further comments.
The second sentence that Yolanda wrote is a good something to come back to later. Is it's just like if you ask a student journalist, what questions would you ask to uncover hidden information? Some of them would give you really smart questions, and some of them would be very naive. So uncovering hidden, Jamie, you're a natural at this. You can answer this without even trying.
First, you go to a coffee shop, I think.
Yeah, by the way, did everybody read Jamie's book sometime in the last year or two?
Absolutely, yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I've told Jamie in the past that UX strategy book was like it's still like a Bible to me for what I do every day, and that it was super inspiring because I didn't know it existed and I didn't know it was a job field. In fact, I think that exact quote that gets addressed in the book.
Maybe.
But,
well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, Jamie, it's really hard for me to explain to people what validation is once they start saying, give me an example. And if I give them an example, they say, oh, that's obvious. Everybody knew that. Everybody can see that. And I say, no, it's only obvious today because, the failure has happened. So sometimes I'm involved in pitch presentation evaluations. And I say, here's where we need to do the immediate validation questions. And they're not all obvious.
I'm not sure who brought it up, but regarding the questions, so the best piece of advice I got that grounds me as a user experience researcher and strategist is to not fall in love with the answer you're going to get, but fall in love with the question you're going to ask. Because too much, I'm finding myself as I'm writing an interview guide or something, I think about, how they're going to answer this, how they're going to answer that. But when I reframe it to like just ask a really good question that they can think about directly, mull over, give you the best innovation, I find that's how I write some of my best interview guides, when I think about falling in love with my questions, which it sounds narcissistic, but for me it totally makes sense.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Hey, Jamie, thank you for including me in this group of PhDs.
You're very welcome. I have one last question for the group. I actually was screencasting this. I don't know if it worked out, but I want to know if anyone has issues of me putting it up as a video versus just our audio. If you have an issue with being seen on video.
I'm just glad I shaved this morning, so cool.
That's funny.
Melanie, are you cool? I mean, it's an experiment.
Yeah, it's fine.
You're fine? Okay, good. Because I think it would be useful for people to be able to see what we're looking at. And I'm going to try both. And so great. Well, I hope everybody comes back in January. And I'm going to just do this 10 a.m. session. I totally got a lot out of today. And I really appreciate you all coming. And I wish everybody happy holidays.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, thanks very much for organising it, Jamie. It's been really fun.
Sure thing.
Yeah, Jamie, you set up a good framework. You managed to reframe the world's needs, what we needed. You got people who knew your book and knew this subject, and you challenged them. So I love it. Give me more challenges.
Right on. Well, thank you. I didn't know if I got people that read the book, but it looks like some of you guys did, so thanks. All right, everybody. I'm signing off. And
All right. Cheers, guys.
See you in a few weeks.
Christmas.
Bye, Bevan. Bye, Melanie.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Leo.